Hello and welcome. This is HLessJon, episode 8 of my Java Fundamentals course. We're going to be continuing to look at primitive variables. In this episode, we're going to look at issues with conversion, integer division, shortcut operators, and the basic information that you're going to need to know about strings. I'm going to begin with conversion. If a value of a narrower data type is converted to a value of a broader data type, this is called a widening conversion. And there won't be any problems because there will be no loss of information. It's pretty easy. If a value of a broader data type is converted to a value of a narrower data type, there can be some information loss. And this is called narrowing conversion. Let's take a look at the convert example.java code that illustrates this conversion issue. And it also shows you the basic tools that you're going to need to deal with the conversion. Here you see that number 1 is an integer and the number 2 is a double. Number 1 is a narrower number on the range than is number 2 because it is an integer. This causes problems if you try to convert a double into an integer, but not if you try to convert an integer into a double. Let me run this and show you what happens. When I run it, I get this error stating that there's possibly a lousy conversion from double to int. This error will occur when you try to do a narrowing conversion. I can get around this by forcing Java to cast the conversion with a simple command int. When I force it, it does the conversion, but it truncates the 2.2 down to 2, which is the loss of information. If I do the same program over again but make the double 2.2 into just the double 2, it will cause the lousy error message to appear again. Even though nothing would be lost from converting a double 2 into an integer 2, it will throw the error because it's a double going into an integer that will cause the error. Here's a list of compatible data types, what you can and cannot convert into other things. It's important that you at least be aware of that there is an issue when you have conversion, because when you run across that lousy conversion error, you'll know immediately you've done some conversion somewhere that's not working properly. So let's turn now to integer division now that we've looked into that conversion issue. What is the value of 1 divided by 2? Now naturally you're going to think, well, it's 0.5. But remember, this is an integer. There is no point in an integer. So what's going to happen is this is what the truncation issue is. And the answer is not going to be 0.5. It's going to be 0 because it's going to truncate that 0.5. Before I finish with the primitive variables and get into the string variables, I want to look at shortcut operators and increment and decrement. Now the shortcut operators are these 5 different operators. You notice the equal sign is always on the right. These can be a little confusing. So let's look at the first one. It's called an add, a shortcut operator. It's the add and assignment operator. It adds the right-hand operand to the left-hand operand and then assigns the results to the left operand. And I will look at code real quick here and show you how that works. Okay, let's look at this, shortops.java. You notice the first integer, number 1, equals to 2. Integer number 2 is equal to 7. And then I print those numbers out, 2 and 7. So that's pretty standard. You should be used to that by now. Then I go in and I make another integer, number 3, and then I make it number 1, and then plus equals number 2. And this is your add and assignment operator. It adds the right operand to the left operand and then assigns the results to the left operand. So effectively, it's taking number 2, it adds number 2 to number 1, and then assigns results to number 1 again. So we have 2 plus 7, and then assigns the answer 9 back to number 1. And if you'll look down here at the code results, you'll see that number 1 equals number 9 because 7 plus 2. Number 2 remains unchanged, and then num3 is equal to the results that we got. That's how that works. You might want to spend some time looking at this and playing with this so that you can better understand these, because these aren't used a lot, but when they are used, they can be a little confusing. So let's look at the increment and decrement, the plus plus symbol and the minus minus symbol. Now these all depend upon where they're placed, the prefix or the postfix. The prefix performs the incrementation operation and then returns the value of the incrementation operation. For instance, I give a little example of here. The postfix and the prefix is important because the prefix performs the increment operation and then returns the value. The postfix returns the current value and then performs the increment operation on that value. So let's come over to look at some of the code. I've sent some code over to my website. All my code and my questions will be found there. You can find it under postfix.java. And let's look at that real quick. I've got the int num equals 1, int number 2 equals num1 plus plus, the int number 3 equals num2 plus num2, and then I have those printed out in two different places. So let's run that real quick and see what's happening here. So we go back into the program and compare the results to our program. We can see, so our first int, num1 equals 1. We immediately then print that out with the word start equals 1, because that's what we assigned it. And on the next line is the postfix plus plus. Int number 2 equals num1 plus plus. And then that will be printed out as num2. And if you look down, B, we assigned the number 2, and that prints out as 1. Okay, that's a little weird. But think about it. It's the postfix. And what does that mean? The postfix first returns the current value and then performs the incrementation operation on that value. So it returns the current value. So num2 is the current value, 1. So that's why number 2, or B down here, says 1. After that, it returns the value, number 1 will now equal 2. When the system prints out A, which is num1, it prints out 2 because it has converted the num1 from 1 to num1 plus plus, or 2. And then when we take num3 and equals num1 plus num2, we get 3. So that's how that works. You might want to play with this because these incrementation and short operators can be confusing. It's just something that you have to get used to using. We'll go slow when we do use these, and you will eventually understand how they work. They're not used all the time, and they're used in pretty specific situations. Be easier to understand when we get around to using them. Finally, in this episode, I wanted to talk about strings and string literals. The string literal text has to be surrounded by double quotes. For instance, in Hello World, it is surrounded by double quotes. That indicates that it is a string literal. Strings are not a basic data type. They're not like the integers and the doubles. They're not. They're different. They're used pretty much the same way, and you'll get used to them very quickly. But Java provides a special support for character strings through the java.lang.String class. Quickly, I want to look at the escape sequences. These are important. You're going to need to know these because you're going to want to put in some symbols into your strings that you're not allowed to. For instance, the quotes. If you ever want to use quotation marks in your Java print, you're not going to be able to do it because if you notice, they're surrounded by quotes. They're part of the language. So there are a certain method that you use here, the reverse slash followed by the quote mark. Then that will allow you to insert quotation. There's a couple of others, and I also wanted to show you a few things inside this code that I created. So let's go take a look at that real quick. The code I created is called escapesequence.java. It's up on the website. Now, first thing I would like for you to notice is there are two different types of print. The system out print, and the system out print line. Because of the lack of the use of print line or print ln, when I run it, you'll see that 1, 2, 3, 4 is all on one line. Now I did use some of those spectral characters that we saw, the reverse slash T1, reverse slash N. That gives me and then 2, 3, 4 are all going to be on the same line. And then the next one, but I included the apostrophe on both sides of number 1, the word number 1, and then the semicolon, and then a new line. Now notice where I put the new line there, and then on the next line there is a new line, but it's in the beginning. So the new line returns, drops down a line, puts those dashes in, but because the next line, the slash num3, does not have a new line and return statement, it just prints on immediately after the dashes. So that's an example of how to use some of that stuff. It's a good idea to be familiar with these because you will have to use them at some point in time and space. This is HLessJon. I hope you've enjoyed this little lesson on Java fundamentals. Don't forget to thumbs up and subscribe, and I will see you guys around.